Timmy Tactical here, finally doing a video. It's been so long. So today I'm bringing something a little bit special. This is the Kel Tec KS7. I was lucky enough to get my hands on one of these right before they went into mid-production. So let's go over a few gripes. There's a few things that I definitely want to talk about. Off the bat, one thing that was pretty interesting about this gun is this. Of course, again, this weapon has been safety checked prior to the review. The weight, which is almost non-existent. I mean, we're talking like super light. If I were to grab the rear, which is where most of the action is, hence most of the weight, I can literally just with my 2 fingers. I mean, that's how light. And for a 12 gauge, you can imagine how punishing it is. And it really is. In fact, one of the guys that was on the range that day, one of the many that actually came up to shoot this gun, let me shoot his Mossberg Shockwave. And as you guys know, that's shorter. It looked like it'd be more punishing, but it was actually heavier. And on top of that, it actually did not kick as much. This one just really beats the hell out of you. And it's mainly because bull pump and the action is in the rear. So I guess that's completely normal in that aspect, but it just, yeah, it really gets you. So I definitely recommend right now, before I get any further in the review, a limb saver. And we're gonna go ahead and recommend a muzzle brake. That way you can get some of that gas out of there and take some of the pressure off your arm, because your arm will certainly thank you. And those were just cheap Walmart loads, guys. Those weren't even slugs. So that's something to take note of. But the design of this gun, not to change the subject so fast, is just beautiful. Look at that. It's like something straight out of Alien versus Predator. Like, honestly, it's just has that doom slash futuristic segment that I wanted to get in before I go any further in this review is to talk about the operation of the firearm. So because most of us are used to shooting standard pump actions where the fore end is at the front and the action happens on the side, unless you have an Ithaca, which it drops the shells, I believe, from the bottom, it's a little bit different. So you can short rack those sometimes and get away with it just because of the design of the gun, but on a bolt pump you can't. And even if you do rack this all the way to the rear and you do it too slow, it will fail to pick up a shell. I'll show you guys in this segment here. So what I'm basically doing is I'm racking the slide just slowly, and as you can see, it's just failing to pick up a round. So this gun relies heavily on gravity and the inertia from the slide itself. With that also comes a few double feed issues. Now we've actually found the double feeding on this gun is a bit inconvenient in the aspect of jamming it, or unjamming it, excuse me. It's kind of a bitch, forgive me for my lack of better terms. So what ends up happening here, I have the slide rack back to show you guys. What ends up happening here is this is your little feed ramp deal right here, and your shells go in here, okay? So what happens is it'll load one in the chamber, and then it will take another shell. Because of the inertia, again, it'll pop in here, and of course you can't do anything about it because there's already one in the chamber. So what you're stuck with is a shell that's just kind of dangling there. So what we found that you had to do, and it's honestly a pain in the ass, is you have to rack the slide partially forward, and you have to do it so that the feed lips, as you can see, are out of the way. It's not going to let you do it forward fully because the shell's obstructing it, but at that point you can take that loose shell and you can shove it back into the feed tube, and then the fore end will go back into battery. And so that's not definitely a good thing in a home defense situation, but that's just kind of something that I found you have to do with this gun in order to get it to cycle again. It was pretty rare that it actually did that. I mean, surprisingly, I was able to get through about 90 shells in one sitting, and I'd say maybe like five times, and that was because I was learning to operate the weapon, is when it functioned or failed to function that way. But both ways did not render the weapon inoperable, so it was still fixable in the battlefield, if you will. So it's not something that's going to have to go to a gunsmith or anything, but definitely something to take note of. How to take down the weapon, so I can't really tell you guys yet, so I'm not going to give you false information, but I believe you have to take out a few pins to get the action out. But I'm not too worried about it. It's a shotgun, so we'll get to that later. Let's go over some of the controls. You're just pushing down this guy right here. You know, pretty simple, straightforward process. And then, of course, your safeties here. It's ambidextrous. So it's got like a little visual indication of what's going on each side. Pop that guy out. So that's what you get, you know, easy to operate. I know Mossberg does it on the top, and then I believe Remington does it as a button in the trigger guard. So it's kind of cool to see that they had their little design similar to revolvers, I guess. Colt, Smith and Wesson, and Ruger does their cylinder opening. Also get this silly little carry handle that comes with it. I say silly because it makes it a lot heavier to use, and kind of like a little bit less ergonomic in the fact that it's not as slim. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is slimmer because it only has the single tube, which I probably should have said in this review before. It doesn't have the two, just like the other KSG. And it comes with a sight. It's like a little fiber optic sight. It's not tritium or anything like that. But the rail does come off, which is cool. So Kel Tec kind of knew that you were going to want to remove it. And you can put the standard accessory rail from the KSG directly on it. But I believe that's the limit of the accessories that this gun shares. As far as like muzzle brakes, you have to get ones that are specifically made for it because of the feeding tube castle nut here is a little bit bigger than on the other KSG, and it's 2 on the KSG, so that little space in the middle is easier to screw on, so they made it thinner. In other words, this is closer together, so it's not going to work. So don't go buying any muzzle brakes for it that are for the KSG. You have to get ones for the KS7, which I'll put some links in the description on some cool stuff that I actually plan on getting. I really love the gun. The recoil situation, that's probably the only complaint that I do have, and of course, you know, everything else you just have to learn how to use. And I can't stress enough, if you do purchase this gun, just remember guys, you have to rack it all the way to the rear, and you have to do it sharply. I mean, you have to rack that guy just all the way back. If you don't do it, it's just not going to cycle. It's just going to fail, and you're going to think it's broken. You're going to send it back to Kel Tec. Kel Tec's going to look at it. They're going to probably send it back, and then you're going to say, oh, I was doing it again. This weapon sucks, blah, 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 blah. But it really doesn't, because if you think about it, this is a genius design. One thing that I love about it is an 18.5-inch barrel, 26 inches overall length. That's something that you would get with a pistol grip Mossberg Persuader or Remington or whatever. But either way, that's going to be a longer gun. That's going to be something that's not as concealable. This one, you can get all the way up to your shoulder, and you can actually use it, because the issue with those pistol grip shotguns is you can't really aim them, and even if you do, it's pretty difficult and clumsy. But because of this bull pump design, you can shoulder it, and it's just an effective weapon. Home defense, I would train before you do it. I just can't really recommend it for that matter right now because of the issue that it has, especially because if it's you know, at night and you're in your house and you don't know what's going on, it's going to be extremely difficult to clear that jam that I showed you guys at night, and especially quietly, because it's going to make a lot of noise racking the slide, and it's just, yeah. So that's something I definitely would recommend. Trigger pull on is pretty stiff, definitely heavier than my Mossberg 500. So I would say with that, you guys kind of make the choice on if you want to get it. The price is, I got this one for $580 out the door, but they tend to be around $450. They're a lot cheaper than the KSGs. And for that kind of money, if you're just looking for something kind of novelty-ish, fun, attracts a shit ton of attention like the Desert Eagle, I would get this without a heartbeat. Like, it's fun, as you guys can see. Like, it's fun. I loved shooting this gun a whole lot. It's extremely punishing, but the more you shoot it, the funner it is. You find yourself not being able to stop. One last thing I want to get into before I leave this review is the ejection port. So this was an issue that plagued the KSGs as well. Just because of the placement of your hand, you're going to notice two things with a bullet pump shotgun. You're going to notice that there's going to be gas that kind of kicks out in your nose because the action is closer to your face. That's completely normal. It's not unbearable by any means. But one thing that can be a little bit unbearable if you cycle this weapon quite a bit is the shells fall directly on your hand. And it's hard to see on, I'm not going to be able to show you guys on camera, but the position that it happened over here was kind of in the middle of my thumb. The shells dropped down directly on there, and I had a huge golf ball size, like little like bruise, and that's something you have to get used to. So if you're going to operate this weapon, I would look for the deflectors. I don't know if they make them for this design. I know they make it for the KSG. I'm not sure the KS7. Or the cheaper route, just get some gloves. You're probably going to want it anyway because of the recoil. The handle doesn't beat you up too bad either. Neither does the forend. Some people were complaining that the forend would beat you up with the recoil, but no. It's really this guy back here because it's just not much padding. See, it's you know, rubber, but it also feels a bit like plastic. Like up here is like hardened plastic, so it beats the hell out of you pretty good. So I would definitely say operate it with gloves. just because of where it kicks the shells. And it's kind of funny because it throws those guys out pretty far, which is some like Alien versus Predator space bullshit. But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for supporting my channel. I'm pretty happy to see that I finally made 600 subscribers. I really wanted to bring this weapon to you guys. It's been a while. I've just been so busy with work and whatnot. But thank you guys for supporting my channel for the most part. So now I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. You guys take care.